Hey, greetings everyone. Thanks for being here, and I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas. We just want to have a little quick press conference. Three of the things we want to talk about today is, of course, the Texas lawsuit that has gone forward, and also now we have the legislative session coming up starting the 12th of January, and we have the head of our Legislative Priorities Committee, Ms. Jill Glover. She's going to give you an update on our 8 legislative priorities. And then we also, one of the initiatives that we want to start, when you look at the incredible I guess if you want to say the gains that we had in the minority communities all across the United States of America, especially here in Texas, one of those initiatives that we have starting is to help bring our message into the urban communities. But first and foremost, with the Texas SCOTUS lawsuit, 106 members of the United States House of Representatives have also signed on with a letter to support that lawsuit. 17 states have signed on to back that lawsuit, and if I'm correct, 6 states are actually going to make themselves part of that lawsuit. The most important thing is that the rule of law, which is so important, it must prevail, and uniform voting is an important requirement. What this lawsuit basically says is that everyone should be operating based upon the rule of law. And when you have voting irregularities, when you have secretaries of state, governors, and courts that are changing election law and not the state legislators doing that in these respective states, this has a damaging effect on the people such as in the state of Texas and these other 17 states that have co-joined with Texas in this lawsuit, because it affects those people that are following the rule of law. And we want everyone to follow the rule of law. And I think there's a lot of misinformation, if I want to say it that way, that, you know, this lawsuit is about throwing out results. This lawsuit is just saying that now this needs to go to the electors chosen by the state legislatures in these 4 states instead of based upon the election results because of the irregularities that we have seen. 4 of the AGs in Georgia, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, they have brought this on themselves because they abandoned the rule of law. I just came from Georgia. I was there yesterday, and you know about the consent decree there where they said that signature verification was not required for the mail-in ballots that were there. That's a violation. We don't allow that here in Texas, and many other states don't allow that. And so we cannot have people that don't follow the rule of the law. Either our Constitution has a meaning or it does not have a meaning. And in the constitutional republic, we want it to have a meaning, because if we don't abide by the rule of law, then what will we abide by? And it's a real great honor that a Texas Senator, Senator Ted Cruz, who was the former Solicitor General, will be a potential litigator for this case before the Supreme Court. So I think that once again you see Texas stepping forward and leading, and other states are joining with us and following our lead, and I think that's something we should be proud of. The next thing is, like I said, we have our legislative session coming up on the 12th of January. We have 8 legislative priorities, and also I added executive overreach, because if you think about it, that's one of the things that this lawsuit that Texas is bringing forward deals with, is executive overreach and also the overreach of courts to go in and change election laws. And I think that's something that we need to also look at here in the state of Texas. But I'm going to let SREC member Jill Glover, who is also the head of our Legislative Priorities Committee, give you a quick briefing on our legislative priorities.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would like to just tell you where our legislative priorities come from. Our state convention delegates voted on these this past July. We had over 5,000 of our delegates who chose 8 priorities. They are election integrity, religious freedom, pediatric gender modification, abolition of abortion, constitutional carry, monument protection, school choice for all, and banning taxpayer-funded lobbying. In addition to these being chosen by the delegates, all but one of these priorities have been on either the 2018 or 2020 March primary ballot. So between 1.5 million and 2 million Republican voters across the state of Texas have stated that they agree with these priorities. Would like to highlight the top 3. Election integrity, as Chairman West has already mentioned, is of utmost importance. If we do not have a fair and valid vote in our country, then we don't have a country. And so our delegates have stated that it is very important to verify citizenship and make sure any violations of election code are punished by law. Secondly, religious freedom. Again, one of our most important principles. we want to make sure that our individuals, our organizations, and our business owners are protected and free to express their religious beliefs and not violated by any local ordinances or state laws. And then third, pediatric gender modification. This is an interesting one that has just come up in the past few years. It seems to be a new contagion that is sweeping our land, and I will be perfectly honest with you, it is horrific. I am a licensed counselor, and in 30 years of practice, I have not seen something coming into the medical and mental health field the way that I have seen this occur. In the past few years, we have seen young kids being subjected to puberty blockers, hormones, and surgeries to remove perfectly good body parts because either they have some gender dysphoria or because their parents think that they have some gender dysphoria. Over 90% of kids outgrow gender dysphoria by the time they hit their early to mid-20s. And so this is purely medical experimentation. It is abuse. And our delegates and our Republican voters have said very loud and clear that we must ban this practice in Texas. Again, these 8 priorities, they are wholeheartedly supported by our Republican voters. We support, and we are going to do everything that we can to help our Republican legislators pass these priorities. They line up with our principles and our platform, which are based on freedom and our inalienable rights granted by God, personal responsibility. Republicans believe that life is sacred and children should not be subjected to medical experimentation. Finally, in order for us to petition our lawmakers on these priorities, the Capitol must be open. And so this weekend, tomorrow, the SREC will be voting on a resolution asking that the Capitol be open with no restriction during the session for the public to go and to testify and to lobby our lawmakers for these priorities. Thank you very much.
In this last election cycle, 2020, you saw President Donald Trump get the most support from the minority communities of any president, Republican president, or Republican candidate since 1960 with Richard Nixon. One of the things that we want to do here in the great state of Texas is ensure that we are having constant and continuous engagement and policy inclusiveness with those minority communities. One of the successes that you saw here in Texas was the ability to go into the Rio Grande Valley and get some counties like Zapata County that had never voted Republican in 100 years to now be a Republican county and to vote and turn red. But we also need to focus on our urban population centers, and this is very near and dear to my heart because when you look at the decimation, the fatherlessness that you see in our urban city communities, especially our black communities, we want to focus on that. And one of the great things about the Republican Party of Texas is that it was founded on Independence Day of 1867 by 150 black men in Houston, Texas. And so what we are going to look to do is establish a coalition called the 150 Black Men of Texas. We want to get black men to go back into these inner city urban communities based upon those conservative principles and values, the principles and values that founded this Republican Party of Texas. And so I'm proud to have Dr. Tim Wesley, the Republican Party of Texas historian, to be leading the effort of establishing the 150 Black Men of Texas, and he'll talk about that.
Texas is indeed special. When we look back at the history of Texas and we consider how the Republican Party started, indeed, July 1st, 1867, it was 150 black men that was a part of the foundation and the beginning of this great Republican Party here in Texas. We're going to look back at that history. We're going to intentionally reshape the perception. Right now, the perception is that if you are black, you shouldn't be a part of the Republican Party. Fact of the matter is, when we look back at the history of Texas, this is where all the breakthroughs happen with respect to black people in this great state. It was Republicans from the beginning and for the first 100 years. Plus, we're going to tell the story about what took place not only nationally but also in the great state of Texas. We're going to talk about the delegates that was a part of the Constitutional Convention. We're going to talk about the 38th Congress in Washington, whereby the Freedmen's Bureau bill was pushed forward that helped people such as African Americans that were suffering. We're going to tell the story. We're going to reshape the perception. We're going to reignite participation. We looked at about an average of about 10%. President Donald Trump got about 11% of the black vote here in 2020. We're going to change that because at one point, if we go back to the 1860s and beyond, African Americans was overwhelmingly voting Republican because they know who the stalwarts were for us as a people. And so we're going to make sure that we restore the confidence of black people in the Republican Party and let them know it's okay to come back home. We're going to tell the truth, we're going to tell the history, and we're going to put Democrats on notice that they can no longer assume that they own the black vote. And we're going to make sure that Republicans know that we have an opportunity to earn the black vote. We're going to do this through education, outreach, and more importantly, not just outreach as people say the word, but we're going to really connect with people to build relationships. And we're going to build a network of 150 black men throughout the great state of Texas, different professionals of different types, so that they'll know that you have a home with the Republican Party, and we will be able to tell them, welcome back, let's grow together.
Thank you. That ends our press conference. What are your questions?
Chairman West, are there any circumstances under which Joe Biden takes the oath of office where you will consider him the legitimate president?
Well, I will tell you that if we can resolve all of these issues with the voting irregularities, then I'll be happy to do that. But I think that every Republican, Democrat, Independent, Green Party, Libertarian, if you look and see, I think it's 47% in the United States of America. And this 47% of Americans believe that there are voting irregularities in this 2020 election cycle. So I think that's something that we need to be concerned about. If we do not honor our election integrity, we do not honor the rule of law, if we have all of these practices whereby people are violating election law in the respective states all across the United States of America, then the oath that I took on 31 July 1982, the Constitution of the United States of America, it doesn't mean anything.
Will Supreme Court rulings and the resolution of all pending lawsuits be resolved in your definition of it?
Well, what the Texas lawsuit is asking for is not to throw ballots out, but for the electors to be chosen by the state legislators. But that's part of the Constitution.
If the Supreme Court rejects that, will you consider Joe Biden the legitimate president when he takes the oath on January 20th?
I want to make sure that all of the issues that we see resolved out there are rectified.
So if there's any lawsuit pending on January 20th, you would not consider
If there
Joe
are
Biden?
unanswered questions out there, and furthermore, I don't know why you're asking me this question. For the past 4 years, it's been the other political party that has been contentious over the results of the 2016 election. This is all about the rule of law. Either you believe in the rule of law or not. And Joe Biden is not more important to me than the rule of law and the constitutional republic that we call America.
And what will it mean to you to not accept a sworn-in president as the president? How will that change what you do or what you believe? Will you not respect the actions of the president?
I will respect the Constitution.
Will you respect the actions of a president?
I will respect the
taking oath?
Constitution, sir.
So you might not respect the actions of a duly sworn-in president of the United States?
If it is in violation of the Constitution of the United States of America, you have my answer.
Under your definition of it or under courts?
It's under the definition of what it says right here,
Your
the thing that I care.
Your interpretation.
It's not my interpretation. If we have a Supreme Court that rules against the law, then I think we have greater problems than whom I choosing to support.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Say, Chairman West?
Yes, sir.
You were a soldier.
I'm a what?
You were a soldier.
Yes, I was.
Would you have ever...
Go Army, beat Navy.
Would you ever take your
Oh,
troops...
yes.
Would you ever take your troops into battle unprepared or unaware of the enemy's threat?
No.
And what about, in this case of COVID-19, are you concerned or unaware of the threat?
Well, I think that when you look at the threat of a virus that has a 99.96% recovery rate, I think that you justly live and confront that in that way. Look, it was the Centers for Disease Control that said that 94% of the deaths that we have seen here in the United States of America are based upon the comorbidities, not just COVID-19 itself. And so when you look at the fact that it is type 2 diabetes, it is the hypertension, it's the heart disease, all these things that are really people are dying with a COVID, but we still have those issues. So I think that's a real enemy that we have to still continue to confront. And then also think about the level of suicides that are happening, and think about the level of businesses and people that are losing their lives and livelihoods as well. Yes. Anybody else?
Sir, there have been state lawmakers, Republicans, who have vocalized opposition to some of the statements that you made during the COVID-19 response. We saw you at the protesting outside the governor's mansion earlier this year.
I wasn't protesting. I was reading the resolution that was passed 54-4 by the Republican Executive Committee.
I'll change my word. You were demonstrating outside the governor's
I wasn't demonstrating. I was reading the resolution that was, passed by the SREC.
Well, how do you accomplish some of the things that the SREC has committed to when there are seemingly some divisions amongst the party between some of the elected state lawmakers and some of the members of the SREC?
It's very simple. The people of the SREC represent the individuals that enable those lawmakers to be in office. So if they want to thumb their nose at the people that enable them to be in office, you shouldn't be asking me, you should be asking them.
Chairman West, now that Dave Phelan's been endorsed by the House Republican Caucus as their candidate for next speaker, do you still have any reservations or concerns?
He is welcome to come and speak to the State Republican Executive Committee. If he wants to do it and show up tomorrow, I will give him an opportunity if he wants to do it by Zoom call. But the most important thing is I want to know what he will do to make sure that these 8 legislative priorities that are overwhelmingly supported by the Republicans that enable him to be in that position, what is he going to do to get those priorities passed?
Are you concerned you haven't heard much from him so far on that point? Haven't had a dialogue?
The only thing that concerns me right now is will Army beat Navy tomorrow?
Do you have any plans to run for public office in Texas?
I don't know if you know the verse from Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 through 6. If you don't, you should read that. I had no plans on being the chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, but here I am. So I will be a loyal servant to God, the country, and to Texas. I don't plan my moves in life. My mama taught me you can write your plans in pencil. God's got an eraser.
How do you respond to Senator Cornyn, his assessment of the lawsuit by the Attorney General? He was also a former Attorney General, and he's basically saying he doesn't see any merit to that.
Well, I'm just a dumb old guy that used to jump out of airplanes for 22 years, and I kind of see this as either you're for the law or you're against the law. When you look at what has been brought up in those 4 states, you cannot change election law right in the middle of an election. You cannot all of a sudden change the date of mail-in ballots being turned in. You cannot expand this thing called absentee balloting to have a universal mail-in ballot. You cannot change law that says that you don't have to have signature verification on mail-in ballots. All of these things are true. This is all about the rule of law. And again, everything in that lawsuit is based upon chapter and verse out of the Constitution. So if I'm a simple guy, I read it, I can understand it,
Chairman West, Governor Abbott also changed some things responding to the pandemic and how we vote and when we vote in Texas.
And I think you know where I stood on that.
Should the Texas results be thrown out?
No, the Texas results should be thrown out. But again, we brought this up, and it was brought to the Supreme Court. Now, why did the Supreme Court of Texas say that it was okay for an executive to be able to go in and change election law? You need to ask the Texas Supreme Court. You know where I stand. I stand on the side of the rule of law, and that's why I made it an issue here. Anybody else? Well, thanks a lot, folks, and have a great day. And if I don't see you, Merry Christmas.
Can we get this drawing of the other speakers' names and their titles?
Good morning, everybody. Will Dupree here in the KXAN live studio. There you're seeing Chairman Alan West of the Republican Party of Texas leaving the room after holding a news conference just a few moments ago there in Georgetown to talk about a few things. We'll run back through those really quickly. First, he addressed the lawsuit that the Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton has filed, joined by other states at this time, challenging the results in 4 battleground states and sharing his support for that particular lawsuit to move forward. However, we should point out there is no evidence at this time of voter fraud or illegal voting that tipped the result toward President-elect Joe Biden in those particular states. Just want to point that out too. They also shared what priorities they are going to really focus on and push for during the upcoming legislative session, which starts in January. The top 3 of note, they shared 8, but the top 3 that they really drilled into and talked about, number 1 is election integrity, number 2 is religious freedom, and number 3 is pediatric gender modification. among those 8 priorities that they talked about, COVID-19 was not among them. He was asked about that, Alan West was, just a few moments ago. So we'll have to see if they will share any kind of point about that particular thing. Also, they also talked about gains within the minority community here in Texas during the election, with more voters turning out for Republicans. They announced this new effort called 150 Black Men of Texas, which will work to recruit 150 black men to serve as role models and show that the Republican Party can have gain some more voters in that regard. So we are looking into this. I will let you know that our reporter, Wes Rappaport, is in the room there. He asked a question of Alan West just a few moments ago. He is also reaching out to the Democratic Party of Texas to get their response to this and also maybe share some of their legislative priorities. So we will see. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us on our stream. I'm Will Dupree here in the KXAN Live studio. We'll see you back here another time. Please, everybody, stay safe and stay healthy, and take care.